To the bottom of it. Holly Hughes, the Liberal Senator for New South Wales, is on the line. Holly, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark.
So where are we up to with all of this? You've made contact with the Premier and have you had a response?
No, I haven't. So you might have more information than I do. I haven't heard anything back, but I sent him a message last night. Just looking at those buildings around the world being lit up, and when you look at the list of the countries, you know, it's everywhere from Myanmar to Beijing to Switzerland, you know, Niagara Falls in New York, you know, Christ the Redeemer in Brazil. It's extraordinary that globally there has been this effort to recognise the tragedy that is the murder of baby Kfir and Ariel Bibas. And what it makes no sense that no one else has suggested this. That I think we need to reclaim the Opera House. October 9th saw those absolutely dreadful scenes in front of the Opera House that were blasted around the world. We know that Australia's reputation internationally now is not that it's a place safe for Jewish people. And I think we owe it to our Jewish community and that we owe it to ourselves to reclaim the Opera House and show the world that we do stand in solidarity with them and with Israel and particularly the Bibas family and mirror what's already been done in so many other countries.
Well, you're right, Senator, and I'm sure you watched, and I believe you were actually at the anti-Semitism summit at the Central Synagogue at Bondi last week, where the Premier...
I was there from the start to the finish.
Well, the Premier, and I watched the whole thing, it was brilliant. The Premier actually stood there and said he was ashamed that those protests happened on the streets of the steps of the Opera House under his watch. In other words, it should never have happened. So here's an opportunity for the Premier as a make-good to the Jewish community to light up the sails of the Opera House and, show his support for them because he's been extremely strong throughout this anti-Semitism crisis. My question to the Premier is, here's an opportunity to do it. Why don't you do it?
Well, absolutely. And Chris Minns, I have no criticism of the way he's shown leadership through what we've seen, this rising tide of anti-Semitism. In comparison to the Prime Minister, Chris has been outstanding in his leadership and support of the Jewish community. So this, to me, would just be an absolute no-brainer for him to reclaim it. As he said at the Anti-Semitism Summit, he was ashamed that he was the Premier when those activities took place.
Well, I'm sorry to say, Holly, but the information that I'm receiving is that they're putting it down to costs and logistics and they won't be doing it.
Well, I'm not quite sure when you look at all the other reasons why the Opera House has been lit up, when we are literally facing a crisis in this country where Jewish Australians do not feel safe, that the Premier and his government won't stand up. And it's not only to our Jewish Australians and the rest of decent Australian community to see it in the Opera House. The Opera House is iconic. It's known around the world. And I would have hoped it would have started to rebuild our international reputation as somewhere that is very cognizant of what's occurring in Israel, what has occurred with the Bibas family, and the absolute destruction and disgraceful, it's monstrous, abhorrent behaviour that we've seen from Hamas.
Holly, if we can light up the Opera House for the Hindu Festival of Lights, if we can light up the Opera House green and gold for Green and Gold Day in August, if we can project photos of King Charles and Queen Camilla when they came here last year, surely the Premier... surely the Premier can say today that I will do whatever it takes to support Jewish Australians and support the Bibas family and pay my respects to what has happened in these attacks and light up the Opera House sails in orange. Surely the Premier can do that with the comparisons I've just made to some of these other events.
Absolutely, absolutely. The mind boggles that, that this isn't just something that is so obvious to everybody. And it's a symbol, it's nothing more than that. It's a gesture, but I think it's one that would be incredibly well received and would show our Jewish friends, both here and abroad, that we do stand with them.
It's quite amazing. Well, we'll make contact with the Premier's office and see if we can get some more details. But
and look, I don't want this to be a political issue. This isn't Liberal versus Labor. This isn't a political issue. This, to me, is just doing the right thing.
It's respect, I would have thought.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. While I've got you, Senator, I sometimes...
Oh, no.
No. I was just talking about Senator Fatima Payman, right? And I was thinking about some of the other, well, let's just say characters we have in the Senate these days. Do you find yourself sitting there from time to time asking a question, how do some of these people end up in the Senate of Australian politics?
Mark, more times than you would believe. More times than you would believe.
Oh.
It is honestly, I think, if Fatima Payman was on the Labor ticket, she wasn't expected to win. I think this is when parties need to take a bit of responsibility for who they put on these Senate tickets because, if they decide to go rogue, look what we end up with. I mean, Fatima Payman is from Afghanistan, and never once have I heard her discuss the plight of women in Afghanistan.
Yet she's come out in the last 24 hours and she said that Iran is an incredible place for women. What?
Yeah. I think she might be getting slightly different information from the rest of the world.
Why would she say something like that, Holly? I mean, you're obviously a lot closer to her than I am, given you sit in the same chamber. I know you're on very different pages when it comes to politics and everything else. But why would she say that? And are you concerned why she would say that?
Well, she's established her own party that's a religious-based party about Muslim votes. And I don't know, I can't remember what she's called herself, but I've actually never spoken to her. I don't plan to. She's not someone I share views with and conduct with. But she's obviously appealing to a certain demographic, but you don't have to research very far to see what she's saying is just complete rubbish.
Yeah. All right. Well, Holly, we'll make contact with the Premier's office and find out whether or not they're going to do it. But I want to support you this morning. I think it's a great idea and the least we can do, given the plight of the Bibas family and what's happened to them in just the most brutal circumstances. Keep up the fight, Holly. Great to catch up.
All right. Speak to you soon.
That's
Bye, Mark.
Holly Hughes, Liberal Senator for New South Wales. The Premier's